You're listening to an Airwave Media Podcast.
Fargo, the new virtual assistant from Wells Fargo, makes banking faster and easier. Like this.
Fargo, what's my checking account routing number?
And this.
Fargo, turn off my debit card.
And this.
Fargo, what did I spend on groceries last month?
And that's just the beginning. Do you, Fargo? You can. In the Wells Fargo mobile app. Learn more at wellsfargo.com/getfargo.
Terms and conditions apply. Your mobile carrier's availability and message and data rates may apply. Wells Fargo Bank, N.A., member FDIC.
Hi everybody and welcome back to Who Did What Now, the history podcast that's not your history class, with me, your host, Kenny Charlwood, history harlot and reader of books. Hi, and welcome to all of the new people. Hey, the couple thousand who are here now. Wow. I'm not gonna lie, it's a bit overwhelming. Because I've had this influx of listens and follows, and then the TikTok has just gone wild because I gained, was it 40 something thousand followers in 5 days, which is, it's a lot of pressure now because now there's even more people paying attention to me rabbiting on about weird historical stuff that I find interesting. But anyway, new listeners might as well jump in with this. If you like this podcast, if you think, you know what, yes, I do enjoy your work. I want to make sure more people hear you. Go on to Apple Podcasts and rate and review 5 stars. You can say anything. Nobody pays attention to what you actually write. As long as it's not creepy. Don't put creepy stuff in there. I trust you that you're not going to do that. But what it does is anything that you rate and review and you actually write something in, it just boosts up Apple's algorithm, and it means that more people get to see it. It goes up the charts and it really helps me out. I think you can also rate and review on Spotify as well. Other networks, I'm not sure how that works, but there we go. This is actually the first episode I've recorded in a while, partially because I haven't been able to. Oh no, that's not partially. That's basically I haven't been able to. So my laptop that I've had for a decade, almost, not quite, 8 years, I think, it died. It had been dodgy for a while, but I thought I can make it work. So I've been saving up for a new one. I even set up a GoFundMe. So if anybody wanted to help, they could. I'm not gonna push somebody for it because there are people more deserving of funds than me. But if anybody wanted to help, I thought, sure, why not? Pop it there. It'll be fine. And so I should be able to afford a new laptop within the next couple of weeks, if all goes well, which I'm fairly certain and quite hopeful that it will be. So this is all recorded and edited and all that stuff on my phone, so I want to apologise if the sound quality is really dodgy or the editing is janky, because that's on me. I'm doing my best. I wanted to make something because I do have so many more of you, and I felt bad, to be honest, for not making anything. Oh, if you're new as well, don't listen to the first 5 episodes. They're not good. They're really dodgy. And the Sharkar murder, I sound as if I'm on helium or some kind of methamphetamine. I'm talking so fast. So what I am going to do is I think I'm actually going to re-record those so that they are better now that I've got audio equipment and stuff that I can actually use, once I get the laptop sorted. I want to retell those stories in a way that's, not shit. Anywho, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, quit your jibber jabber. In fact you, I will. But first we gotta get our source on. Our sources are The Case of the Murderous Dr. Cream, The Hunt for a Victorian-Era Serial Killer by Dean Job. It took me so many takes to get that right because I kept tripping up over Victorian-Era Serial Killer because it's so many E's, it makes your mouth go wide. That's all I'm saying. Anyway, we also have a prescription for murder. The Victorian Serial Killings of Dr. Thomas Neill Cream by Angus MacLaren. And on top of that, we have Smithsonian.com, Murderpedia, and Murder by Gaslight. So, are we sitting comfortably? Good. So I'll begin. Thomas Neill Cream. By the way, I feel like I should mention that the reason that so many, serial killers and stuff have middle names isn't because more serial killers have middle names. It's just that in order to differentiate them from, people who are not serial killers, we usually add the middle name in just to be sure, Thomas Neill Cream was born on the 27th of May 1850 in Glasgow, Scotland. I mean, we can take half the blame for this, but he was raised in Canada, so Canada's also going to have to say sorry about this. We have Cream, who emigrated with his family, not on his own. That'll be weird. He was 4 years old, and they moved to Quebec. His father, William Cream, he becomes the manager of this shipbuilding and lumber farm in Wolf's Cove, which is pretty close to Quebec City. So Cream, he just so happens to be the oldest of his siblings, and he's the oldest boy. So naturally, it is assumed that he's going to follow in his father's footsteps. This turns out not to be the case, because he gets bored by wood, apparently. So he does start off following his dad's footsteps. He starts apprenticing and shipbuilding, and when his dad ends up with his own wholesale lumber business, because, upward motion and stuff, Thomas Neill Cream is helping his dad out. But then he kind of doesn't really feel it, and he decides to go to uni. But what did this infamous Dr. Cream look like, I hear you ask? Well, see, here's the thing. He kind of looks like a hamster cosplaying as a human. Also, he was unfortunately cross-eyed. But he was rich and a doctor. So in Victorian England, that wasn't really the worst you could get. He had a mustache. And that's kind of, I don't really have a lot else to say about him aesthetically. So in 1872, in October, he's 22 at this point. He goes to McGill University in Montreal, and he studies there up until 76, so he's there for 4 years. Oh, and he's studying medicine. So while he's at McGill, he basically earns this reputation for being, rich. The terms I think were used were wild and extravagant, but he was showing up in fancy clothes, he had loads of jewellery. In a show of Look What I Have, he ends up with this really, really fancy carriage because, no ordinary carriage will do. He's a material girl. Sorry, I just think it's really funny that, to this day, men are still really obsessed with, their wheels. It's just, all right, nice. So he graduates from McGill with merit, and he gets his medical degree at this crowded ceremony on the 31st of March, 1876. And the address that was given to his graduating class was, the evils of malpractice in the medical profession. Which, Cream is very much going to show this because, his thesis was on the effects of chloroform. That's what he did. Because it still wasn't as widely used when he first started writing about it. I mean, it was gaining popularity, sure, but he became, super into it. So he graduates, he's now Dr. Cream, and he meets this lovely young lady, Flora Eliza Brooks, who just so happens to be the daughter of a really wealthy hotel owner. Well, he knocks her up, she gets pregnant, and Cream decides he's going to perform an abortion. Okay, needless to say, this does not turn out well, and Flora becomes really fucking ill. And once her dad finds out what happened, he tracks him down. He goes and finds Cream, drags him back to Waterloo, and he forces him to marry Flora at gunpoint. I mean, it quite literally was a shotgun wedding. I'm not sure if it's very cowardly, very clever, or very courageous. I think I'm leaning more towards being both clever and cowardly. The day after he gets married, the very next day, he goes on a ship and sails to England to quote-unquote continue his medical studies. He ends up going to St. Thomas's Hospital in London, and he basically attends lectures and he works there a wee bit for 2 years. But surprise, surprise, this Lothario just can't keep away from the ladies. So during his time in London, Flora, his wife, basically has bronchitis and apparently dies of consumption. However, her doctor is really fucking suspicious, and she thinks that her death is linked to this special medicine that her husband had lovingly sent her to help her with her conditions. I mean, the doctor doesn't do anything at the time, but he is legit convinced that Cream poisoned his wife to death. Does he rush back to bury his bride? Of course he fucking doesn't. No. What he does instead is he goes up to Scotland for a wee bit, gains a qualification of the Royal Colleges of Physicians and Surgeons in Edinburgh, before heading back to Canada on May of that year. He sets up a medical practice in London, Ontario, not London, England, and starts a career as an illegal abortionist. So one of the reasons that Cream actually goes back is he's planning to get his wife's inheritance, because of fucking course he is. So he's back in Ontario. He's there for like a year at this point, and there's an outhouse behind his office building. A body of a woman is discovered. Her name is Kate Gardner, and next to the body is a bottle of chloroform. The police are like, this is a wee bit A, convenient, and B, suspicious, because there's a woman in this wee building behind your building, and she appears to have died as a result of consuming chloroform, inhaling chloroform, which is something you specifically stock and have a habit of making quite a bit. See, another wee thing that would have aimed some suspicion at Cream was that Kate Gardner just so happened to be his mistress. So, when the inquest happens about Gardner, basically Cream's like, oh no, that woman visited me on several occasions, but I refused to provide her with abortifacients. Like, he was saying that she tried to get him to perform an abortion. He said no, and so she stole the chloroform and ended her own life. I don't know what you know about chloroform, but here's some basics things. You really have to get a good inhale of it, and one of the reasons it works so well is the more panicked someone is, the more they, inhale. And depending on your size, chloroform will have a different effect. Whereas, like, if your body mass comes into it, like if you're big and burly and strong, you're going to take more chloroform to become like a pain reliever. But if you're a young, small woman, it's going to take less. Anyway, Kate Gardner's death is, ruled as suspicious, and that she died from chloroform administered by some person unknown. They didn't have quite enough evidence to convict Cream, but the suspicion was mounting against him so much, he had to close his practice and get the fuck out of Dodge. And so he left Canada for the Windy City. That's right, Chicago. So he basically sets up a medical practice near the West Side's sex work district. And very, very soon, very quickly, he becomes known to police as a backstreet abortionist. And so they decide they're gonna They're going to make sure that they keep a wee eye on him, you know? Because he has a habit of catching police attention, because he's one of those people who thinks he's smarter than he is. So the cops, they're keeping a wee eye on Cream, obviously. And they're very aware that he's performing these back alley abortions. And so a lot of the sex workers in the area, they go to him because, well, they don't really have a lot of other fucking options. So one such woman, Mary Faulkner, she dies as a result of Cream's surgical ineptitude, really. But there really wasn't enough evidence to charge Cream with. Later on in that year, in December, Ellen Stack dies after taking medicine that was prescribed to her by Dr. Cream. So even though we know that he prescribed the medicine, even on her deathbed, Ellen refused to admit that she'd even gone to see him. You see, I mean, she was an Irish Catholic maid for like this Chicago businessman. And the mistress of the house had even said, do not go near him. Stay away from Dr. Cream. So whatever Ellen's condition was, the lady of the house did not want her going to see that dodgy fella. Whether it would have caused a scandal or whether she actually cared about, you know, the people under her, I don't know. But Cream having the audacity, here we go. So Dr. Cream tries to blackmail the pharmacist that, you know, made up the medicine for Ellen. He's like, I know you poisoned her, you altered this medicine. And the pharmacist, who's like just a pretty stand-up guy, is like, fuck this for a game of soldiers. And he goes to the police. And the police go, yeah, whatever, it's fine. And no charges were brought forward. Like, what the actual fuck? In 1881, however, they do manage to get enough evidence to put Cream behind bars. You see, again, he's so fucking cocky. Cream starts an affair with a woman called Julia Stott. So Cream, he's desperate to make some money because, you know, he is. And he decides to put an advertisement in a Chicago newspaper for his anti-epilepsy pills, which he claims to have created, which is what brings the unfortunate Daniel Stott to the door. So he is marketing these pills as like a cure for epilepsy, and Julia's husband sends her into the big city to pick up the pills. Over a period of time, he manages to convince her to like set up a life insurance policy for her husband. So she does. He gives her pills full of strychnine. Fucking strychnine. Instead of having something nice and slow and, you know, kill him over a period of time that would not be really fucking suspicious. Not that I want to give any murderers out there tips, but like, oh fuck, it's so stupid. So she gives Daniel the pills and he basically dies within minutes. When Stott dies, as we know, Cream is, you know, knocking boots with the Mrs. Stott. He convinces her to blame the chemist for administering the wrong pills. And, you know, because he's trying to build up a body of evidence. And as such, he telegraphs the coroner to tell him that the chemist fucked up. That, you know, get the blame away from himself. You know, from the poison that he fucking made. But anyway, and because he sent the fucking telegraph, right? Because he did that, the coroner was like, oh, I guess this isn't an accidental death after all. This is more likely to be foul play. Because, you know, oh, what? Somebody messed up the medication, somebody died. Oh, no, that's a shame. You know, he probably would have blown it off. It probably would have been fine. But because Cream was so desperate to lay the blame on someone else, he just incriminated himself, which is just fucking typical. So the coroner is like, okay, I'm going to test these pills just to rule it out, because he's got a wee suspicion, you know. And he feeds them, I'm sorry if you're an animal lover, he feeds them to a dog, and the dog dies 15 minutes later in what I can only describe as... Being a part of a royal family might seem enticing, but more often than not, it comes at the expense of everything else, like your freedom, your privacy, and sometimes even your head. Wondery's new podcast, Even the Royals, pulls back the curtain on royal families,
past and present, from all over the world, to show you the darker side of what it means to be royalty. From icons like Grace Kelly, Oscar-winning actress turned Princess of Monaco, who the world saw as the ultimate good girl. She mastered playing a happy wife and mother, but beneath it all, she was desperately lonely. Grace spent her whole life working towards perfection, and it ultimately cost her her happiness. Or King Ludwig II from Bavaria. He was only 18 when his father died, leaving the crown to him and a duty to rule that he never wanted. He refused to lead, and used the funds from the royal treasury to further his extreme love of opera. But this choice eventually cost him the crown and his life. Follow Even the Royals on the Wondery app, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can binge Even the Royals ad-free right now on Wondery Plus.
The regular season is heating up. New stars are emerging, and that means more opportunities to win up to 25 times your cash on Prize Picks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projection on a wide variety of stats, and place your entry. It's that easy. Let it fly to turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Easy gameplay, quick withdrawals, and injury insurance on your picks are what make Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Watch your favorite players and get paid doing it this basketball season. See your entries make progress during the game or make new entries for the second half and the fourth quarter. 3-pointers, assists, rebounds, and everything in between are yours for the taking. Join the Prize Picks community of more than 7 million players who have already signed up. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit of up to $100. Just download the Prize Picks app and use code GET100. That's code GET100 on Prize Picks for a first deposit match of up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy.
A lot of pain. Yeah, sorry. He almost gets away with it because of the audacity. He just can't stop. And he's a greedy motherfucker. He decides to throw suspicion on another fucking pharmacist. Okay, he decides to throw suspicion on a person when there was no suspicion to be thrown. There was no reason for this. He just fucking felt like it. Like, how? You were free. You were home free. You had managed to not get caught. And now you're like, you know what? There's just not enough danger in my life. I need to, get caught. Okay. He sends a letter to the coroner accusing the chemist of poisoning Stott. Because Cream decides that he would sue for damages on Julia's behalf by blaming, Stott's death on the fucking pharmacist. And the coroner's like, no, it was an epileptic fit. Don't worry about it. And he just ignores Cream's letter. And because Thomas Neill Cream just really wants to fucking get his hands on that money, he goes over the coroner's head to the district attorney. So the DA, he gets Daniel Stott's body exhumed, and they found enough strychnine in his stomach to kill 3 people, 3 fully grown men. And basically, Cream gets charged with second-degree murder because they were like, it wasn't the chemists, it was clearly you, motherfucker. So obviously the trial happens, and Julia Stott takes the witness stand and absolutely 100% exposes Cream. She tells them the whole story, what he did about the pills and how she was seduced by him, the whole fucking enchilada. Now, so Cream, he actually tried to flee, but they caught him and he ended up in jail. So Thomas Neill Cream is sent to prison to the Illinois State Penitentiary in Joliet. And he's given a life sentence. Unfortunately, a life sentence doesn't actually mean life. And he gets released from prison in June of 1891 because his term is reduced. So his term was reduced to 17 years, and then he got an early parole for good behaviour or some shit. I don't fucking know. Maybe they were like, we can't afford to feed this one, send him out. He hasn't killed anybody while he's in here. Well, you're not exactly his target fucking audience, are you? So Cream, he's in prison for 10 years. He's 10 years in, he's got a decade behind him, and his father dies, making all of the Cream boys, all of his sons, really fucking rich. And now that Thomas Neill Cream is a wealthy man, he, strangely, for no apparent reason, now that he's super duper rich and family has a lot of fuck ton of money, his life sentence in prison is mysteriously commuted. It's okay that you murdered this person and we're fairly suspicious that you murdered this other person, but you're free to go. Have fun. Toodaloo. Thanks for the donation. So yeah, in 1891, Cream was set free. Bye. He gets out of jail, he passes go, he picks up 200 and goes to Canada for a wee bit, but then goes, it's a bit hot up here, I better skedaddle. And he heads off to merry old England. Hooray. Yeah, so he's back in the land of fish and chips, and he goes to London and he sets up this kind of medical practice in Lambeth. And he basically, he kind of goes off the deep end because prison sort of made him worse than he already was. He's drinking heavily, he's taking drugs, he's, just being a general arsehole. And Lambeth itself is like one of the poorest areas, or at least it was, in London. And the poverty there is so rife that he has a perfect feeding ground of victims because they absolutely have nowhere else to go. So there's this police report from when he was in sort of the dodgy areas of London, when he was sort of hanging about the streets, and he would just go up to random strangers and ramble less than pleasant things about women to them, and he would also show them porn. He would carry around pornographic pictures. He kept, whatever the Victorian version of porn was, he had pictures and he would just show them to people, in the street. That is not... Clearly enough, people were worried that there was a police report on this specific incident. What? So, over the next 7 months, he starts poisoning people. So, in October 1891, Cream meets with Ellen Donworth, a sex worker, and they have a drink. And she goes home, she gets to bed, and she's found sort of slumped over, and they think she's drunk, but she's having these spasms and she's in excruciating pain. She's being taken to the hospital, but she dies on the way in fucking agony. And she's known about the area, so people say that, they saw her walking with a cross-eyed man in a top hat. That would be our Dr. Cream. 2 days later, Matilda Clover, she has a drink with Dr. Cream and she dies. Everyone assumes it's alcoholism because she did like a wee tipple, but she was poisoned by him. He may have killed some more people between that and the next two, but we just don't have any documentation of that one. But I find it really fucking suspicious that he just didn't do it, because, he's a prick, and a murderous prick at that. In April 1892, he accompanies two sex workers home, and that's Alice Marsh and Emma Shrivel. And they both also die in excruciating pain, both poisoned with strychnine. At this point, the police are very aware that there's a murder on the loose, and he probably would have gotten away with it because he was, a well-to-do person. He was a doctor. He was from a rich family. He probably, could have avoided being caught if he wasn't such a fucking prick. He manages to just draw such unwanted attention upon himself because he decides to write letters accusing different people of the crime, but he writes using like nom de plumes and pseudonyms and all this kind of shit. And he just keeps accusing all of these like really respectable people of murder. And like one of the letters mentions like Matilda Clover from before, but no one thought that she had been murdered up until that letter. On top of that, he managed to not finish the job at one point. So there was this sex worker, Lou, I don't know her second name, but her name was Lou, and he had given her some pills, and she was like, I'm too drunk to take these, this is probably not a good idea, and she throws them into the river and manages to like not die, which is good for her. We like her, we're glad she survived. And she manages to like come back later on and testify against him in court. Your Eminence, wait, what's the name of a judge? Your Honour. There, Your Honour, there's the fellow that gave me them pills. On top of, writing these like fake accusatory letters, he also starts bragging to like friends, and he starts talking to them and telling them all of this information about the crimes that, only the killer would know. And one of the people he decides to have a conversation with is a former New York detective, John Haynes, who is like one of Cream's buddies. He's his pal, and he takes him on a tour of the murder scenes. Why don't you just hand yourself in at that point? I really don't. So after being taken a tour of the murder locations, Haynes is like, okay, I'm going to do a wee bit of background checking here. And he finds out that Cream, who had like changed his name like a bunch of times, was the Thomas Neill Cream, who had gone to prison for poisoning somebody and everything that went with it. In Scotland Yard, they're really starting to get pissed off about this, and they are following Cream. Because not only are they on the lookout for the Lambeth killer, but they're collecting all this info. Like Matilda said that a cross-eyed man with a moustache gave her pills. Emma Shrivel and Alice Marsh said that they took pills off a cross-eyed man. He gave them long pills and, then they died in their house. And of course we have all of the blackmail letters that he's sending to like doctors and wealthy people and all this shit. And they're physically handing these letters into the police. And they're like, hey, this is the exact same handwriting. Kind of illegible, kind of scratchy, like a doctor's. So when Haynes comes to them and goes, hey, this is a bit weird, let me share this with you, they go, okay. They also notice that the murders stop for a period of time when Cream takes a trip home to visit his brother in Canada in January. So when it all sort of accumulated between, a bunch of people, victims and so on, literally describing this very specific aesthetic of Dr. Thomas Neill Cream, the collection of blackmail letters that were like by Dr. Neill, Thomas Neill, Neill Cream, so on and so forth. Also, in addition, furthermore, the retired New York policeman that he informed of the crime and took a fucking tour of it. What? Who then told Scotland Yard, who then... All of these added up and resulted in, first of all, Cream really being put under surveillance. And this is like a multi-country sort of investigation. You had people over in like the US and Canada who were like investigating Cream, and then you had obviously the UK were doing the same thing. And this is actually okay, so there's this inquest held by Athelstan Braxton Hicks. And the reason I'm saying Athelstan Braxton Hicks is I just wanted to say the name Athelstan. So there's an inquest held in July 1892. And there's a letter signed by Jack the Ripper stating that Dr. Neill was innocent, which made, like, everybody laugh. But the jury is like, yeah, Matilda Clover died from strychnine poisoning, which was provided by Thomas Neill. So they were learning about Thomas Neill Cream. And one of the things that comes up is obviously the fact that he was convicted for murder by poison in 1881. And so, this all comes together. And on the 3rd of June 1892, Thomas Neill Cream was arrested for the murder of Matilda Clover. And on the 13th of July, he was formally charged with the murders of Matilda and the rest of the girls. So he gets this, but at the inquest, right, in July, there is a letter which is apparently signed by Jack the Ripper, and it's read by Athelstan Braxton Hicks. Now, I just wanted to say the name Athelstan Braxton Hicks because it's really nice. If I ever get another pet, I'm naming it Athelstan because that's just, it's like Abernathy. It's just a lovely name to roll off the tongue. Anyway, so when he's arrested and charged, he's like, I couldn't be the murderer because because I'm only Thomas Neill. I'm not Thomas Neill Cream. And it's like, all right, that's not, no, okay. No, you're the same person, motherfucker. We have a description. Oh yeah, you both have the same name and also look remarkably similar and also have the same accent. What the actual fuck? Anyway, so he goes to trial from the 17th to 21st of October in 1892, and the jury deliberates for 12 minutes, finding him guilty on all counts. Yes. And justice is served by Justice Henry Hawkins, who sentences him to death. And on the 15th of November, 1892, Thomas Neill Cream is hanged by the neck until death at Newgate Prison by executioner James Billington. So basically, as he was on like the scaffolding and he was about to have a short drop and a sudden stop, apparently the executioner says that he was starting to say, I am Jack the, trying to claim he was Jack the Ripper. But first of all, MO completely different. Just, anyway, even the victims weren't the same type of victim, but we're going to discuss that at another point. And, I mean, if nothing else, Cream was in prison during the Ripper slayings. Like, he wasn't in the country. He couldn't have done it. And in death, he's treated like every other, fucking criminal. He gets buried the same day beneath the flagstones of the prison, marked by, an initial. And then in 1902, the body's disinterred, and the body is moved to London's Municipal Cemetery, and he is buried in an unmarked grave in section 339. So, fuck you, sir. Fuck you. Now, and so ends the story of Dr. Thomas Neill Cream. I am so sorry it took this long to get this episode out to you, but I am hoping this is all okay because this has all been done on my phone, so hopefully this is fine. But let's finish off with what we learned today. What we learned today is that straight white men really do have the fucking audacity, don't they? Really do. Apart from the fact he was clearly a fucking sadist, who liked to have control and who just enjoyed women having agonising deaths, even if he wasn't there to specifically watch over it himself. On top of that, the fact that he thought he was smart enough to, extort people and blackmail people for crimes he fucking committed, okay. And, the fact that lots of the female victims, they had literally described Cream. If you had just gone out to Lambeth at the time, taken a wee scour around, you would have fucking noticed him. This is why I'm very much in favour of believing victims. I'm a believe victims first, and if we make a mistake, I'm sorry. But the amount of times women have been spoken over and been invalidated and lied about consistently, I would much rather believe a victim first and be proven wrong than allow someone to be hurt and another person to be destroyed just because you didn't want to upset somebody's feelings. What? No. Fuck you. Anyway. what we learned today is men have always had audacity. We should believe victims. And, you know, and also like the illusion of wealth and social standing really gets you away with a lot. Like, doesn't it just? Anywho, let's do a recommendation time. You know what I'm going to recommend, actually? Toast of London. I started watching it and I'm fucking dying. Matt Berry is an absolute genius and he's hilarious. For listening, I'm going to recommend the Queen's podcast. Not as in the Queen, but Queen's podcast. And their stuff is really fucking funny. They're funny, they're smart, and they tell the story in a way that I really appreciate. And I may even use them for research in the future because their stuff is so good. I love it. Anyway, I'm going to really try and edit this together now, and I don't know how well it's going to turn out. So please go on to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, rate and review 5 stars. If you're on Apple, when you're reviewing, let me know how this episode turned out because I'm going to be too scared to re-listen to it, I think. Anyway, I hope you all had a really great weekend, and I'm gonna chat to you next time. Adios, au revoir, my friends. Bye-bye.